So going into that muscle memory and stuff, I remember you mentioning something about sleep and how that kind of works with your muscle memory and your effective chunks of practice and things to do that. So if there's a part that people find difficult, whether it's physically difficult or whatever it is, and they're coming up to it in their practice, every time you come up to this section in the song, you feel, oh, this is like the hard part. How do you best work around that muscle memory and incorporating in the sleep and things like that?
Yeah, cool. I'm glad you brought this up because I think it's a really interesting sort of concept that I've sort of lent into over the last couple of years myself. So obviously, like, when you're practicing something, whatever it might be, the idea of repetition comes into play. Learning anything, you want to repeat it and you want to do it consistently. Now, I think a lot of people think when they have to learn something, they've got to be practicing hours and hours each day to do so, which can be daunting, which can also sort of take the fun out of it a little bit, right? You can, it can turn it into a chore to some extent. I've definitely felt like that before, but never fear. There's other ways to do this. It doesn't take like monotonous practice, and this is, some people would say there's a cop out, but I honestly feel like it works really well. And this is to do with the sleep thing. So obviously, when you're trying to learn something, you want to do it. Ideally, you want to do it every day. And I think what most people think is doing it every day for multiple hours. I don't believe that anymore. I honestly think it's more so just reiterating the idea in your head every day, whether that be 5 minutes, half an hour, 2 hours. That's up to you. But I honestly think even just doing it 5 minutes a day is gonna make a huge difference. So say you're trying to learn something, and it's too fast for you, right? So what I do in this scenario is obviously work with a metronome, and I'll start off in a comfortable tempo, 90, 100 BPM. And I'll sit on that for, a minute or two, and then I'll bump it up 5 BPM. Sit on that for another minute or two, or 5 minutes, whatever. Bump it up again. By doing this, you're obviously like 5 BPM increments, almost like unnoticeable. So it's a really good, like 10 BPM, it's definitely noticeable. 5 is only just noticeable. So it's a really good sort of leap to sort of help you push your tempo. Now, you might have an end goal of 150 BPM. And on your first day, you sit there for hours trying to get it to that tempo, and you can't, you're doing this sort of approach where you're bumping up the BPM. You might find yourself getting to 120 and you can't play it solid. You can't play it perfectly for a minute. You keep making little mistakes here and there. That's okay. That's perfectly fine, right? At that point, what I do is I have like a little journal, and I'll write down, I got to 120 BPM this section today. If you go back to it again tomorrow and just do the same process, it might take you 5 or 10 minutes, just starting again back at like 90 or 100 and then bumping up 5 BPM at a time. Within a day or two, you're going to be 5 or 10 BPM faster than that first day where you found yourself struggling at 120. I guarantee it. And now this also, obviously, like the daily repetition is just like, you're just looking at this every day and getting it, solidified in your head. But I also learned from watching this documentary, I can't quote which documentary it is because I can't remember the name of it, but I found it really interesting, which is about sleep and learning. And I'll try and cut this story as short as possible. But basically, what these scientists did, they were experimenting on rats to figure out different ideas to do with sleep. And during the day, they had these rats going through a maze, and the maze was the same maze every time they did it. And there was some cheese at the end of it. They also had like some sort of brain scanner on this rat's head or mouse or whatever it was. And he could sort of see the brain triggering when it was turning left and when it was turning right. Essentially, the rat learnt the path of this maze. Got really good at it. Whatever it was, left, right, and it would do it throughout the day, and it would sort of light up different areas of the brain depending on whether it was turning left or right. What they noticed while the rat was sleeping, they kept this brain scanner on. It was actually firing through this map of left, right, left, right, whatever it was, as it was sleeping, but like 3-4 times faster than how it was doing it throughout the day. Then they noticed the next day, the rat was faster at going through the maze off the bat. Essentially, what they discovered is that just by having a good night's sleep, essentially you can get like up to 30% better at something that you were working on the day before, just because your brain is going through the process of repeating what you were doing again. So if you can trust that you're going to do this every day, whether it be 5 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, and you have a good night's sleep and come back to it the next day, I promise that you'll feel better at it.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, it's weird how it works, and it 100% works. I've tested on myself and other people, and it fully works. So
yeah, I can back that myself.
yeah, it's crazy. It's interesting.
It's subconscious or something. It's crazy. It's like you're thinking about it and then envisioning it, and then it's becoming true.
Yeah, it's the
absolutely.
I heard of one of the recent podcasts from Andrew Huberman. I don't know if you know of him, but he's a neuroscientist and did a exact podcast on this recently about the sleep and the learning patterns. I think you'd find it super interesting. So he was talking about this, and he was talking that there's actually effects on the second and third night as well. They're just not as profound. And if, say, for example, the first night you don't get quality sleep, or something happens, you still get benefits on that second and third night onwards after doing that repetition. But you're right, it compounds if you do it daily. And then he said there's a specific, more optimal window in terms of time, like you were suggesting before, not doing it for hours and hours and hours, having a certain amount of really concentrated, focused attention on it for 20 minutes, half an hour, 40 minutes or something like this, and then leave it and move on to something else.
Cool.
I might have to send that to you because it's well worth a listen.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, so that sort of thing plays into the muscle memory, and then you can build it up and get faster, and then all of a sudden you're getting to a point where you can play all of these things and that kind of stuff. So
absolutely.
I wanted to touch on that because I know that you find that really fascinating, as do I.